What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing cases of extremely violent hauntings. We talk about hauntings a lot here on this channel, and as many of you already know, they're scary enough as it is. Just to hear someone whisper your name when you know you're home alone, or to hear footsteps in your attic when you live alone and you know there's nothing but storage up there. Between me and all of you watching this at any given time, we've literally been through it all. I know I spend a lot of time here on this channel talking about communicating with spirit and with your team, angels and guides, etc. But I want to make the distinction that when a spirit is haunting a home or a person, it's not the same as the spirit with a capital S I am suggesting you all communicate with and work with in your lives. For one, spirit, like ones that haunt the average person, is spelled with a lowercase s and the other is an uppercase. More so than that, though, when a spirit decides to stay here on earth for whatever reason it does so, they're called earthbound, and that's when we end up with certain types of hauntings. Some remain here on purpose, and some think they're stuck here, some are good, and some have more nefarious intents and purposes when it comes to the living. But what I want to talk to you all about today are some extreme cases, and I say extreme based on my knowledge and experiences and what I inherently know of when hauntings become violent. I can talk all day, as I'm sure most of you already know, about literally anything, but about the different kinds of hauntings, what kinds of spirits carry them out, the reasons and what it looks like to the human or humans involved. In fact, throughout many streams, I've done just that. But guys, even when the paranormal activity an average person experiences is innocuous, it's still somewhat harrowing, and it can cause a lifetime of terror depending on where that person is at spiritually or just with their belief system in general. And yes, I know y'all don't like when I say that, some of y'all, but it does matter. Sorry, not sorry. Some hauntings, though, take what I would call an average, usual, or even run-of-the-mill and turn them into something malicious, tormenting, and downright traumatizing. Here's a small sampling of some of the most extreme cases I could find and report on while continuing monetization for this video. Trust me, guys, it gets worse sometimes than even what I've chosen to include here in this video today, and it's pretty bad, but I did do my best to get my point across. A point I am always and forever, or at least seemingly so, trying to make to you all about hunting ghosts and dealing with the paranormal on a whim, or because you think it's cool, because you're bored, whatever the case may be. Even if you're doing it because it sounds cool or you're trying to debunk it, the truth remains that it can end up violent and deadly, or you can end up with a lifelong attachment that will torment you until there's nothing left. On that note, let's jump right in. So let's start off way back in the day, like in the 17th century, when a violent haunting happened in Scotland. And yeah, I'm sure more than one happened back there in that time, but y'all know what I mean. It was February of 1695, and the Mackey family would have their world turned upside down, and they would start questioning everything they thought they knew when they experienced and were subject of one of the most intense and violent hauntings ever on record. And I'm not making that stat up. That is what several sources said. The Mackey family consisted of the father Andrew, his wife, and their children, who I could not find names for. It started off with the whole family being assaulted by various objects like stones, furniture, whole logs, and all sorts of other random objects that have no business moving around on their own, let alone assaulting living people in the home, with these items flying through the air, seemingly of their own accord, from all directions without warning and out of nowhere. And on many occasions, there was enough force behind them that they would leave marks like welts and bruises all over the family members and other victims. The family was scared, rightly so, and so they called in a minister named Alexander Telfair, and he too was assaulted with the same type of objects doing the exact same things, all of their own accord. And that's what makes this terrifying, right? You know, you're sitting here and suddenly your Stanley Cup just bops you in the head and knocks you off your chair. That's terrifying. And most people do not know how to protect from things like that. I mean, that's the norm, not knowing that these things are happening around you. You just can't see them. So Alexander Telfair, this minister, said that he was assailed by those things, the logs, the staffs, all of those things, and by a force that would, quote, throw stones and divers, other things at me, and beat me several times on the shoulders and sides with a great staff. So those who were present heard the noises and blows, end quote. By the way, the word divers, it said throw stones and divers other things at me. So I didn't know what that meant. So I looked it up, and basically it means it would throw various objects at him. I don't know why he didn't just say that, but it was Scotland and centuries ago, so they probably just spoke like that. Anyway, focus, Gemma. The minister had no effect on anything with the blessing he gave, and in fact, everything intensified after he left and did whatever it was he did. I'm thinking he tried to do a blessing on the house, but those can go one of two ways, and it seems it went the worst way for this family. The children would be attacked by unseen hands that left red marks and scratches wherever it touched, and the mysterious force would drag people out of the house by itself. They were kicking and screaming. Can we just envision this for a moment? And this is why I'm kind of smirking and smiling. It's not because I think it's funny. It's just, it terrifies me. This is nervous happiness, nervous giggling, I guess you can say. You're chilling at your friend's house that you may or may not know is haunted, and you're sitting at the dinner table eating or on the couch chatting with them, and all of the sudden you're dragged out of your seat by something you can't see or identify, and it's literally pulling you out of the house and out the closest door. It's terrifying. There's no other way to say it. However, this was only the beginning, and things would get progressively worse from here. The objects being hurled, flung, and tossed at them from across the room were becoming more dangerous, with things like knives and various heavy instruments being weaponized against the family as well. The intention of whatever was in the home was clear. It wanted to hurt and harm, possibly worse, this family and anyone else in, near, or around the home. So the family employed their own blacksmith, I guess, because the house blacksmith was referred to in that it was said he almost was beheaded by a plowshare and a trough that were hurled at him. Not only this, but there were dozens of random and odd fires that would spring up seemingly out of nowhere, and that had no known cause even after they were investigated. There was also a hulking shadow figure that could be seen wandering around inside the home and all over the property as well. It would appear and disappear just as quickly, just as randomly. Obviously, given the time and place all of this was happening, the family was convinced all of this was the work of demons and the devil, and they attempted to have the home exorcised on dozens of occasions. However, it never worked, at least not for long, and often the clergymen themselves were tossed in the air with brute force by something unseen, as well as they had things thrown at them with the intent to cause harm. This didn't deter these clergymen, though, and many ministers continued in their efforts in trying to help this poor family reclaim their home from whatever dangerous and deadly force had overtaken it. One time, when one of the many ministers was going about the by then usual business of trying to bless the home and rid it of whatever nefarious and dangerous forces were lurking inside of it, a disembodied voice could be heard very clearly, somewhat strangely, saying, quote, "Thou shalt be troubled until Tuesday," end quote. The activity completely ceased on the next Tuesday, but not before the paranormal forces showed itself one last time, appearing as a giant, very dark, spinning funnel cloud that spun in the air and flung huge clumps of dirt and mud at everyone in the home who was standing there watching it all unfold in shock and horror. I don't know what day of the week that last blessing happened on, but I am relieved for this family that they were finally able to regain the peace in their home and to reclaim their home as their own. The thing is, I have no idea what could have brought on all of this and why whatever it was chose this family in particular. What was different about that final blessing that seemingly unrelenting paranormal forces in the home decided to just move along and finally leave them alone? Maybe it was nothing, and maybe the paranormal forces had planned coincidentally to leave on that Tuesday all along. But that's highly unlikely, right? As low vibrating and negative entities and spirits will stick around as long as there's energetic food in the form of fear and terror for it to feed off of. Maybe it just got tired of all of the blessings and decided it was no longer worth the effort. I wish I had answers as to what was haunting this poor family and why, but honestly, I'm sure that someone in that family did something, whether knowingly or unknowingly, to bring about those experiences. And I don't say that in a judgment, like blame, placing, pointing the finger manner, but because it's just the facts in cases like this. It can and usually is done. The entity or force is invited in completely and totally by accident and unbeknownst to the person who did it, but it doesn't make it any less harrowing, dangerous, or scary. So around the same time frame, a few years before the Mackey case happened, and also in Scotland, there's the tale of Lord Advocate Sir George Mackenzie. He is known now as an English torturer and war criminal, and he was tasked by King George II to carry out strict, fierce, and severe punishments to the Presbyterians because the king wanted the country of Scotland to all be under not only the same rule, but the same religion. Most of the sadistic tortures carried out by Lord Mackenzie were done at a decrepit and creepy old cemetery called Greyfriars Kirkyard, which was then turned into some sort of makeshift prison, somehow, called the Covenanters' Prison. I was shocked. Takes a lot to shock me. I was shocked to learn that by the time Mackenzie died in 1691, he had been responsible for the deaths of an overwhelming 18,000 people at least. He was only doing this for about 8 years, guys. 18,000 people tortured to death in a little under 8 freaking years. This dude was a monster and a true example of a dark spirit. The dark spirits I talk to y'all about sometimes here on this channel. It was this guy. Ironically and somewhat poetically, he was buried at the cemetery where he carried out most of his atrocities on innocent victims who simply wanted to worship their own religion. Hundreds, if not thousands, of his victims were also buried in that same cemetery, but he was buried in a special tomb known as the Black Mausoleum, and he was tumbled to a chamber within it. That's what it said. I don't know what that means and couldn't really find an explanation when I looked it up, so if any of you know what it means to be, quote, tumbled to a chamber, end quote, in a mausoleum, please let me know in the comments below, please. I'm sure by now most of y'all can see where this story is headed, right? Yes, that cemetery is spectacularly haunted, and it's all very malevolent. Interestingly enough, though, there were almost no reports of hauntings in or around that cemetery until hundreds of years after everything I just mentioned to you all happened. Actually, it started kind of recently in 1998 when a homeless man was wandering around the area when he fell through a section of the Black Mausoleum that had been damaged and already crumbling. He fell down into a chamber within it, and when he emerged, he was said to have been so driven to insanity by the unspeakable horrors he witnessed within its depths. I don't know what they were, but I believe it. In another case that happened right after that one, a woman was innocently looking through the iron gates of the cemetery for whatever reason when she was violently thrown backwards with great force by what she described as, quote, a great cold wind, end quote. And another woman was found unconscious on the property of the cemetery with severe bruising around her neck, looking like someone or something had tried to choke her to death. The woman couldn't remember anything about what happened to her and said one minute she was walking along normally, and the very next, at least in her mind, she was being woken up and had been unconscious with those bruises and marks on her neck. Many people believe she was the victim of the malevolent supernatural forces that roam around in that cemetery. After that, things would only get worse, and the strange and bizarre attacks in that area would continue. Hundreds of people came forward and said that they had been brutally attacked by something unseen on the property and that they would have the bruises, scratches, broken bones, and burns to prove what they had been through. Many of these people who had been attacked also described feeling nauseous and dizzy, and those feelings, as well as full-blown blackouts, are very common for people who are merely passing through that area. In the year 2000, because of all these types of reports, an official exorcism of the cemetery grounds was commissioned, and a man named Colin Grant was tasked with carrying it out. He said he could sense thousands of tormented souls that were angry and lurking around the graveyard. It actually ended up being too much for him to take, and a few weeks after attempting the exorcism, Colin died of a heart attack. It was described as mysterious and sudden, as he didn't have the type of lifestyle that would be conducive to having a heart attack, nor was there anything wrong with his health that would have alluded to him possibly dying that way, at least anytime soon. I don't know and can't say for sure if the attempted exorcism had anything at all to do with this man's death, but I will say I can't rule it out and can't say for sure if the attempted exorcism was involved here. It's very possible that some of the angry spirits from the graveyard followed him around and waited for the perfect moment to strike and stop his heart. Yes. Okay, I know you're asking, is that even possible? Yes. And in my opinion, it's kind of probable. He was trying to force them back to somewhere. They don't like that. That's their space. And I know that there are many people out there, alleged professionals and self-proclaimed experts, who will tell you that spirits, they can't physically harm the living. But understand right now, gemstones, that is a bunch of baloney. They can and they do harm the living physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and even psychically all of the time. Greyfriars Kirkyard still stands, and whatever resides there is still lurking and active to this day. I feel like that poor homeless man unwittingly unleashed or released something when he accidentally fell through the mausoleum of that torturer. Maybe letting his earthbound or evil spirit out of where it should have been, where it should have remained forever, trying to find rest inside of that tomb, made the spirits of his victims very angry and extremely vengeful. Some of them were probably earthbound, angry, and vengeful to begin with, just based on how they died, but then having to share an eternity on earth with a man that tortured them and their families to death was probably too much and sent them over the edge. Earthbound spirits have rawer emotions than the living, and our emotions are pretty raw. So it's also possible that it's just the executioner who's causing all of the negative and evil energy around that spot, but it is highly unlikely in my opinion. At the end of the day, though, those are just my very best educated guesses, and I honestly have no clue what's going on there and have no way of knowing unless I would go there myself, which I haven't, so I can't speak on it. Let's time jump a bit and look at a case from 1908 where a witness, a French diplomat living in Constantinople, Turkey, who is only known as M. Constans, claimed that he and his wife were absolutely tormented by some type of supernatural entity that was relentless in its pursuit of them. He and his wife experienced this haunting when they stayed at a place called the Red Palace. This couple experienced so much supernatural phenomena at this place, I wouldn't even be able to list it all, at least according to Mr. Constans, but I'll give you the highlights. The diplomat said that on one occasion he was pushed by some invisible entity with such a great force that he was sent flying to the floor, and that same force is what's thought to have continuously lifted his bed off the ground and dropped it back down again on many occasions during their stay. His wife was working in the garden when she was physically attacked by some black mass shadow entity that she described as looking somewhat like a goat, and she was also tossed down the stairs, and the activity was just so malicious and so ruthless that they left long before they had originally intended to and never went back. I don't blame them. So next I came across a case that was described as infamous that happened in 1968 in Jaboticabal, Brazil, but I had never heard of it before. But just because I didn't hear of it before doesn't mean it's not infamous. I'm just saying I do a lot of research. So some sort of nefarious, evil, and ruthless supernatural entity or force put its focus toward an 11-year-old girl named Maria Jose Ferreira. This whole thing did seem a bit outlandish to me at first, but the more I researched and the more I really thought about it, I'm not going to sit here and be the judge as to whether or not anyone else's experiences are true or real. So it all started somewhat benignly, at least for the haunting that ended up being as vicious as this one did, with some rocks, stones, and bricks appearing from nowhere and flying through the air, through the windows of the home and all around, resulting in furniture being damaged and items like glass vases and little knickknacks, odds and ends, being shattered and damaged. I guess it wasn't all benign as it was described because some of the rocks were said to have weighed upwards of 10 pounds. They would always just literally manifest out of the clear blue sky, sometimes while the terrified witnesses watched in horror while ducking for cover, as they knew very quickly what was coming next. It wasn't only that, but whole pieces of furniture, couches, chairs, tables, anything. They were all flung around as easily as a leaf is blown around in the wind, and it started happening more and more as time went on. Like, it progressively got worse. In addition to all of this, Maria specifically became the target of a myriad of malevolent supernatural entities and forces. The unseen entities would scratch at, claw, bite, and otherwise tear at her skin nonstop. There were also needles, actual needles, that were said to just start coming out of her skin, piercing her from the inside out as though trying to escape her body. Now, guys, I'll be honest, that's a new one, and I've never heard of such a thing in my life, but I don't believe it's out of the realm of possibility. Maria, for whatever reason, decided to visit a psychic, and the woman told her that in a previous incarnation, she had been a witch, and that it was the vengeful spirit of someone she had killed with witchcraft at that time. So according to the psychic, the spirit of that person wanted revenge and had finally found the perfect opportunity to take it because Maria was then just a scared 11-year-old little girl. The little girl's clothes would randomly burst into flames while she was wearing them and while she was at school. And that was said to have become a common occurrence as well. Guys, this is horrible. This is a baby, a little kid. And that pisses me off. So guys, this story ended horribly. And I admit that I was shocked and really physically heartbroken when I read how this haunting ended up stopping. It stopped because Maria took her own life at the age of just 16 years old after 5 years of being tormented by whatever supernatural force this was. And it is said that she did so to stop the vengeful evil spirit from terrorizing her anymore. She really believed in what the psychic said and didn't know what to do. So I really hope that psychic knew what she was talking about. And I hope she knows how this ended. Okay? I'm getting a little emotional. So while we certainly don't want to feed into any delusional behavior, we should always listen to our children when they are telling us things are under their beds or in their closets, and don't make them feel like there's something wrong with them for thinking that or saying it out loud, even if it is all just the result of a scary movie they watched or a bad dream. Promise me that, okay, gemstones? Please. Because otherwise we will still have girls like 16-year-old Maria, even in our modern era. Even now in 2024, stuff like this happens. It's just not talked about. In the 1970s, there was a haunting of the Heath family in England. This case is also said to have become a notorious one, but I've not heard too much about it until researching for this video. Then again, I do try to stay away from researching this type of thing too much, so that makes sense to me. So the story of the Heath family went on to become one of the most notorious, infamous, and malicious cases of poltergeist activity ever documented and that the country has ever seen. It remains that way to this day. In August of 1972, the Heath family patriarch, a man named Thornton Heath, and his wife were woken up in the middle of the night by their radio. It had randomly turned on and was blasting some type of staticky and indecipherable transmission that seemed to be coming through in another language. I don't know what happened due to that radio turning on, because most sources just want to move on to the next time something strange happened. So the next time for the Heath family was Christmas of that year. Thornton was in the living room admiring the family's beautiful Christmas tree when suddenly, and for seemingly no reason, the tree started violently shaking and a random figurine jumped off of one of the shelves nearby and flew through the air towards him. It hit him in the head with such a great force that it not only sent him flying backwards into his chair, but it left a mark that really didn't go away for a while afterwards. New Year's Eve offered no relief, and the strange and scary phenomenon continued unabashedly. All hours of the day and night, there would be loud, heavy, and stomping footsteps all throughout areas of the house where no one was at the time, and the lights all over the house were flickering on and off. It all became even more dangerous, believe it or not, when one day Thornton's very young son came into his parents' bedroom in the middle of the night, screaming and crying that some sort of tall, angry-looking man, quote, in old-fashioned clothes, end quote, had been standing over his bed and watching him sleep, with a mean look on his face. The activity didn't stop even when guests were visiting, and there were several witnesses to all different sorts of phenomenon. The family were helpless and clueless as to what the cause of the haunting could have been. Finally, they went to see a priest, and he went and blessed the home. This provided no relief for the family, though, and the blessing only seemed to exacerbate the issues. When the family realized their church and religion wasn't helping, even though they were, desperately trying to cling to that, they decided to go and see a medium who informed them that the main spirit and the cause of most of the haunting phenomenon in the home was a former owner of the home, a man named Chatterton, and that he saw the family as a threat. Oh my God, guys, listen, this happens so often, and I would even dare to say that this is one of the main reasons there are random hauntings that pop up in people's homes all the time, at least in my experience. It's some old owner of the home or the property that just doesn't like something about the family, and they, get the shits about it. Of course, the family had to look into the medium's claims, and they were a bit surprised when they found out that there was indeed a man who used to live in the home in the 18th century and whose name was Chatterton. What a name. The family probably thought that things were as bad as they could get, but if they did think that, they were very wrong. Once they looked up the history of the home, they started to be haunted by another spirit. Chatterton's wife was now showing up on a regular basis and scaring the poop out of this family. She would materialize as a really disgusting, gross old hag with long gray hair, and she would follow the family members around the house all hours of the day and night. She would make it be known that she was watching them sleep. They would see her visage everywhere, but especially standing at the foot of their beds when they were waking up in the middle of the night from nightmares and sleeping. It got so terrible that both Chatterton and his wife, still in the form of the angry-looking man and the disgusting old crone, would appear inside of the family's television screen. After dealing with this and all of the violence that came along with it for 4 years and with no hope of finding any peace, the family moved out of the house and left the haunting behind. Luckily for them, neither spirit followed them when they moved, and they lived peacefully after that. Forever, I suppose, at least as far as hauntings go. I found a case in the files of the Society of Psychical Research I want to talk about now that also happened in the 1970s. A 17-year-old girl from England, only known as Miss A, was passing through a graveyard with some friends one night, joking around and, to my surprise and dismay, knocking over random people's headstones. Never a good idea. There are always consequences to this type of behavior, but people, especially young kids, don't ever seem to think about those things in the moment, and it's unfortunate that Miss A and her friends were not thinking this through. Less than a week after she and her friends desecrated those tombstones, because let's be real, that's what they did, Miss A woke up in the middle of the night out of a deep sleep, and she saw the apparition of an old crone sitting in a chair next to her bed, watching her sleep. That is very creepy. We travel, our souls travel in our sleep, and I feel like darker entities wait for a moment to try to jump us, or they feed off of our vulnerable energy, giving us nightmares and taking the fear and terror. That's just my opinion, though. So anyway, Miss A, honestly, at that point, the first time, she somehow didn't think too much of it, and she went right back to sleep. She had been half asleep when she saw the old hag and maybe thought that she had dreamt it or had been having a nightmare. Throughout the next few weeks, though, that same old crone would follow Miss A around everywhere she went, and when it wasn't already following her, it would randomly appear in her line of vision no matter what she was doing or who she happened to be with. So she's talking to her friends, and she looks over, and there's this scary old crone-looking hag stalking her. Probably because she was a victim of the desecration, one of her tombstones. That's, my speculation throughout, guys. At first, though, this apparition didn't seem friendly or unfriendly, but after a while, it did start to display some types of disturbing behaviors. The apparition would appear out of nowhere and yank objects out of Miss A's hands, and it wasn't just any old items either. The crone's spirit chose things like tea kettles with boiling water inside of them, and other things that would be able to cause great harm to the girl, and she did end up getting burned and things like that. Soon enough, the mother was also experiencing being haunted by the old woman, and she reported that a vacuum cleaner was forcefully twisted right out of her hands one day, and painfully so. The home started experiencing strange water leaks that came from literally nowhere, and that couldn't be explained, even when professionals were brought in, and all of the usual stomps, bangs, thuds, and door slammings would happen all throughout the day and night as well. The normal type of haunting or so-called poltergeist activity. Now, I don't believe it's poltergeist activity when it's connected to an actual spirit, because poltergeists are believed to be, and I don't even know if I believe this, connected to energy of, certain types of people's energy. It's a lot to go into, guys. Heavy objects were being tossed around malevolently and with violent force by something that had a great amount of strength behind it. Things would get even stranger than this when one day Miss A would go into some sort of trance, and when she did so, she would start rambling almost incessantly about a past life where she had been the daughter of a French doctor, and once she would snap out of the trance, she would start doing bizarre things. She could move heavy objects with her mind and bend the prongs on forks. When this started happening, the family finally took notice and decided to move. However, for whatever reason, Miss A couldn't stay away from the now abandoned home and went back to it not too long after she and her family had first moved out. She found that the back door had been broken down or kicked in, and she squeezed herself inside of the hole in the door in order to gain access. There was a telephone still sitting on a mantle in the home, and she was moved, kind of compelled to go and pick up the receiver and listen. When she did that, something promptly grabbed her by the throat and started strangling her in the air right there on the spot. She luckily, very luckily managed to escape, and she ran from the home and never went back to it. She also got really lucky that this haunting she caused, this spirit whose tombstone she desecrated, these spirits, because I'm sure there were more than one, didn't attach to her and decided to stay with the house. Because normally, you do some stuff like that, you are going to carry that haunting with you. You are going to be a haunted person in the most literal sense of the word. And it's very, very hard to remove something like that for most people. So guys, I brought these cases to you all here today, not to scare you, but just to make you aware that those idiots who say that spirit can't harm us are just that, in my opinion. Idiots. Come for me. Come for me. Because I do know what I'm talking about here. Someone said the other day, your videos scare me. Well, Miss Batmom, they're not meant to scare. They're meant to educate and entertain. Of course, spirits can harm us, guys. And if they choose to do so, then we really stand no chance against them. And the best thing to do would be to just move or have someone come in, a professional who knows what they're doing, to try and help figure out if there's any way the family can make peace with whatever it is that's in their home or tormenting them. There's also a very big difference between when a person is haunted, when a person is gifted, and when it's the home itself or the property that has the attachments. There's so much nuance to all paranormal situations, hauntings included. And in my opinion, it's just best to steer clear of places like some of the ones we've discussed here today. Why are you walking through a cemetery and knocking over headstones? Why are you hanging out in a cemetery as it is to be able to tumble down a chamber into a mausoleum? Does not make sense to me, but it's like, don't go looking for trouble. That's what I mean. Don't go looking for trouble, especially when you don't know what in the world or outside of it you're dealing with. Never desecrate graves or behave disrespectfully in graveyards either. I know some of you guys, and it's perfectly natural, so I'm not judging or indicting you, but I know that some of you might feel very much like you're at peace while in those lands of the dead, and that's okay. But always be very mindful that you are a guest and that not everything lurking in cemeteries are once human spirits that can normally be reasoned with. There are much darker things that a lot of us would like to admit roaming around out there, and sometimes it can be the difference between life and death and how we behave and carry ourselves in certain places and in certain situations. Cemeteries are hallowed ground. They are for the dead, not for the living. Okay, and that's not just the once human dead. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, and if you enjoyed hanging out with one another. If you watch this in the premiere, it premiered at 11 a.m. Eastern time, and there's another video coming that will be public for 24 hours before it goes into the members only category, because I know not everyone can afford to become a member. If you can, though, go on and do that so that I can do more membership perks. I don't have that many right now. To my members, thank you. But that video this week is going to be about high strangeness in the forest, and it's pretty scary and pretty creepy. So check that out at 12 noon Eastern time if you're watching this in the premiere. Otherwise, just go on and check it out, you know. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Spread the love by sharing this video. My subscriber count is growing pretty quickly, and I'm really proud of that and excited. Guys, make sure you watch the shorts. Give some love to the shorts. I do intuitive oracle in 60-second short format. So if you're not interested in the singing, the dancing, and all of the weirdness I'm doing on shorts, go and check out your sun, moon, and rising sign in the intuitive oracle for shorts. Starting this week, so by the time you watch this, it will have happened, but it's going to be ongoing. Live intuitive oracle, 7:15 p.m. Friday nights from here on out. Hallelujah, we have an actual day. Don't forget, usually Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, Ghost Dragon ZW does the chill and chat, and you guys can just hang out and talk. He stays on as long as y'all need him. Every other Thursday, usually, we have the Paranormal Pixie doing paranormality. She talks about spirituality. Bring your questions. That is what she is there for. She is amazing, Miss Pixie. I love you dearly. My sister from another mister. On Friday nights, live intuitive oracle. Tuesday afternoons at 1 p.m. Eastern time, afternoon talk with myself and Ghost Dragon CW, where we talk about nothing at all, everything at once, and whatever y'all want to talk about in the chat. We do try to keep it paranormal. And on Saturday nights now, going forward, is going to be Ghost Dragon ZW at midnight, doing replays of my old videos. Okay, don't mind the eyebrows, guys. Don't mind them at all. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. Check out the description box for some important links. All of my books, Missing the Faith Theory, the bestseller, Encounters with Evil, 101 True and Terrifying Stories, Shadow Entities, Sleep Paralysis, and Beyond. Give that book some love, guys. Danger at Your Door, Terrifying Encounters with the Black-Eyed Kids, another bestseller. Midnight Visitors, the companion book to Danger at Your Door. That is all nothing but encounters with the BEK. Campfire Stories, Volumes 1 and 2. Volume 2 did go bestseller. Thank you very much. Guys, pick them up. 5-star reviews on Amazon. Leave good reviews. Okay, I don't read the reviews because a lot of people like to troll me. But if you give good reviews and you give 5 stars, whether it's Kindle, paperback, or Audible that you're listening to it, reading it, give the good reviews because it does keep the books like in the public eye. I'm hoping to have my new book, Gone Mysterious Disappearances, where I talk about the possible paranormality of a lot of the very strange vanishings of people who vanished from wherever, not just in the woods, without a trace. I'm hoping to have that out by May 1st. I'm not sure if I'm doing a pre-order yet, but I'm really excited about that. Please donate to the channel. It's how I get paid. If you appreciate me, if you appreciate the work I do, and if you're able to, I know it's rough out there right now, PayPal and Cash App links in the description box. Guys, if nobody told you today you're amazing, you got this. Abundance is your birthright. Spiritually align and you will go far. If you want to send me your encounters, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. If you have any questions for me, if you want to chit chat, encounters with supernatural, paranormal, extraterrestrial, otherworldly, I don't care what it is, where it happened, if it happened to you or someone you know, send it in for my listener encounters videos. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.